If you clicked on this video, you were probably expecting a huge battle, a huge fight. I mean, we're talking American nationalism. How could we not possibly argue about that? Well, honestly, I'm going to tell you a few stories about some people who had other ideas. And I don't know, maybe between us we could learn something? Hi, I'm Rick. Welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be walking a very fine line, a dangerous, divisive line. But it doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to end unwell. You and I, we can still be friends afterwards. We don't have to be enemies. A few years back, a really good friend of mine had to make a very difficult, very agonizing decision. She decided to leave the country to live elsewhere, and of course she put it on social media, and of course it went about as well as you can expect. There were actually 3 different types of people who responded. You could put them into 3 basic buckets. They all had the same argument. They just all kind of came from a different direction, and frankly, all of them were wrong. The first type are what I like to call the patriots, and you know the kind. They have sort of a slight twang of a hillbilly accent, and they say things like, well, if you don't want to be here, then just get the hell out because you don't love this country. The second group I like to call the fixer. Now, they're the kind who champion every single cause. Every single waking moment, they are up, they are fighting for the greater good. And if you tell them that you're leaving, well, they also have the same response. How could you possibly fix anything from afar? You obviously don't love this country. And the third group I like to call the new citizens. They came from Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, places like that. Their parents fought and struggled to get them to this country, and how dare we think we have it hard here? And you know, if you want to leave this, the place that they fought so hard to get to, well then, you know what? You don't love this country either. Now, as far as what I thought at the time, I really was kind of confused. I mean, her professed reasons for leaving where there was so much hatred, anger, divided bigotry, and divisiveness, and all of those other really unpleasant words. And she just couldn't stand to be around it anymore. She wanted to be somewhere that was less toxic, less noxious, and, well, I guess I was a Pollyanna. I was very naive. I truly believed that we were doing better, that, you know, we had gotten past hatred and bigotry. It all turned out to be kind of a lie, because then the environment shifted, and everyone who was in hiding with their mouths closed suddenly went, I'm allowed to speak now. And speak they did. And that was her biggest reason for leaving. It's because they just wouldn't shut the hell up. Now, I want to take a moment and give a big shout out to a fellow YouTuber. His name is Nathaniel Drew, and he recently put up a video called, Why Do Europeans Dislike Americans So Much? Now, it really didn't have a whole lot to do with what I'm talking about here, maybe just a little bit, but he said something in there. There was one sentence which just captured my attention, and I had to repeat it over and over it again. It said, all societies merit criticism. And what I think he meant by that was, it doesn't matter if you're the best or the worst or somewhere in between. Unless you truly enjoy being stagnant and you never want to grow, you've got to be self-aware. You've got to go, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What's going to change in the future, and how can I improve? All societies merit criticism, especially from themselves. Now, it's not necessarily our fault that we are so ignorant, that Americans don't have a clue about kind of what I'm talking about. We only have 2 borders. You know, the top one is with, well, it's Canada. It's a colder, friendlier version of us. And the bottom border, well, it's with a tribe that we've been told is evil, that's going to be the downfall of our country, and we should hate them all equally well. And so we don't do borders very well. And in fact, I want to give you a good story of how well we don't do borders, something that affected me personally, something which I wish I could go back and change. So, back during the days of COVID, I was out of the country, I don't remember where, came back in, and I got flagged by customs. You know, you sit at the passport control desk and they go, we're taking this, you need to follow us into a room because we have questions. Well, I noticed 2 things as soon as I went into that little teeny room of theirs. One was, they didn't care about COVID. There was about 200 of us in this little small shoulder-to-shoulder packed room. And the other one was, I was the only white guy there. I was the only single person who wasn't brown and didn't have a Hispanic last name. Now, they weren't telling anybody anything, except periodically yelling at someone. There was this one father in there. He was there with his child, a little baby, like 6-month-old kind of baby. And his baby was just wailing. Well, he got on his phone and he was calling his wife, who was not flagged and who was sitting outside of this room. All he wanted to tell her was that, I will be out of here shortly. Can you bring some diapers and some formula for the baby? And he didn't even get that out before the customs guy just came up and started screaming at him. Are you a child? Can't you read? You cannot use your phone in there. And the guy's trying to tell him, I just want to get some formula for my baby and I just want to change. He couldn't get it out because they didn't see him as human. Now for me, the story ended rather quickly. I was only in there maybe 10 minutes. They handed me my passport and said, you are free to go. And I asked them, why? Why did you flag me? Why are we in here? And the guy looked at me and went, you have a very common name. My name is Richard Lee Higgins Jr. I don't know a whole lot of Richard Lee Higgins Jr.'s in the world. But then it hit me. Yeah, I have a common name because it's a white name. They had to have their roles look at least like they periodically trapped somebody whose name was not Espinola or Sanchez. Everybody else in there was still stuck. Now here's the fun thing. Nikki is with me. She actually just walked into the room with me, even though, they didn't flag her, and she went off because she's of Cuban descent. Her people, it was just unfair the way they were treating it. But the sad part is, they didn't care. They just looked at her with absolute dead eyes. They dehumanized every single person in that room because we have such a hatred of the people who come over our borders, such a fear. And it's something that we don't need to do as Americans, but we do. Okay, deep breath time. Let me finish sharing what I originally wanted to share with you before I got lost. Did you know that only 37% of Americans have an active passport? We don't travel. Now, if I were decided to hop in my car and drive from Miami to the top of Florida, it's going to take me a good 10 hours. If I'm in Europe and I want to hop in a car or a train, 10 hours, I'm going through several countries, each with their own culture. Now, as much as we like to think we're different in the South and the East and the North, Americans are Americans, whether the town is somewhere in California like I am now or somewhere back in Florida like I was. It's an American town. We don't have the experience of traveling a short distance over several borders and finding a new way of thinking, a new language, just a whole new culture in front of us. It may not be our fault because we don't have it available to us. Then again, if we're so damn ignorant that we can't hop on a plane and within 10 hours be pretty much anywhere else, then we're not availing ourselves of that knowledge. So if you're going to cast blame, yeah, maybe it is our fault. And here's the funny thing. I remember all too well being in those shoes. When I was in my early 20s, I was working for the State Department. I had never been out of the country. The only flight I'd ever taken before was to Texas, God help me. But no, they put me on a 36-hour end-to-end flight to, Bangkok, Thailand. I was overwhelmed. I had no idea what a culture shock that would be, and I spent 5 weeks in that fine country. Now, at the time, I just basically, honestly, hated it. It wasn't America. Nothing was like what I was used to. Now, it did light a little something inside of me that manifested itself years later, but... It's supposed to be lava up here. I hope there's lava up here. Is the original. That is what people walked on. It is just rebar concrete and holes, and there's nothing to hold you up. That is a pig's ear. A literal pig's ear. I thought it was going to be a euphemism. Good. We just explored. How much better could we be? Instead, we're just going to lock ourselves in our little borders and pretend like we're the best, which kind of begs a question. And that question is the United States the greatest country in the world? And the answer is unequivocally no. You see, here's the thing. There is no number one. Yeah, I know we want to believe that there has to be a number one, because otherwise how can you have a number two and a number last? That is something that we've been taught to believe. And I know that sounds very conspiracy theory-like, but no, there is no number one. And until we understand the whys behind all of that, we're never going to grow. We're never going to move into the future. So I'm going to take a stab at seeing if I can convince you why we are being misled. Now, we humans, we are very tribal. And in order to be a tribe, you have to hate somebody, fear somebody. Otherwise, why are you together? Why are you banding all of your resources if it's not to protect you and yours from the evil people that are sitting over there on the other side of that hill? That is what the politicians want us to believe. That's what the wealthy people who support the politicians and who like to gather more money and power want us to believe. Now, if you are so ingrained with They might hurt me. Why would I ever want to go over there? Because it's so dangerous. It's best to stay in our own little safe yard. Then they tell you that people inside are bad. You know, the gays are bad, the blacks are bad, everybody's bad. It's better to really sub-niche down into your smallest tribe possible, and then just keep voting us in. We'll protect you. Well, who benefits from that? Well, the people who have perpetual government jobs, the people who, well, earn a whole lot more money than the rest of us. And I've got some really horrible examples for you in a minute. That is, if you don't believe me yet, trust me, you'll believe me then. The thing you need to think about now is, are you benefiting from that? No, you've been told that it's too scary to do so. So you don't, because that's the safe option. We're tribal. Okay, I promised you an example, and here it is. All people are sheep, including me, by the way. I'm not being accusatory towards you and everybody else around me. I put myself in this, and I'll give you the example. Big pharma, healthcare, insurances. We have given away our rights to having a healthy life. We're willing to pay ungodly amounts of money just to be seen, to be even close to being healthy. We say we are number one in healthcare. We are not. We aren't even close to number one in infant mortality and in good health outcomes, and certainly not in cost. Our politicians tell us that it's evil to be socialist. It's evil for what that country's doing over there. They just want to hurt you. They want to hurt us. We will never be like that. Socialized medicine, as they put it, is nothing more than the right to have health care and not go completely in debt because of it. Every single one of us is going to have a health concern at some point in life, and it's going to be ungodly expensive. Imagine if we had the right to health care, but we don't, because we listen to our politicians because they tell us that it's not good for our tribe. What they're telling you, it's not good for their re-election campaigns, and yet we're all sheep. We let them get away with it. Think for a good long moment. Why do we collectively do that? Left, right, everybody. Whatever benefits the politicians, it's not what benefits us. We just go along with the flow. Well, it doesn't have to be that way, my friends. It really doesn't. Obviously, this is a pretty sensitive subject with me. I get a little impassioned about it, but I did promise you two things, and I got to finish up with discussing. One is my friend. What happened when she decided to leave? What was the real cause and effect and outcome of the people who criticized her? And the other thing I promised you is, what does any of this have to do with this channel and this video? Well, let's start with my friend. So I told you there were three different types of people who responded to my friend when she said she was leaving. The patriot kept saying, you don't love this country enough. Well, bad news, Mr. Ms., whatever your pronoun is, patriot. You can love something so much that you can't stand to sit around and watch it get hurt. You can't stand to sit around and watch it slowly die. Does she love this country? Absolutely. Did she leave it because she hates it? No way. She left because she couldn't stand to see a place that she loves, that she grew up with, just wither away. So, to the fixer, did she do bad by leaving? No, she's still trying to fix it, but only from afar. She lives on a sailboat. She spends a lot of time just traveling hither and yon, and yes, she comes back to the States. She's doing everything she can socially, everything she can in any way she can, to try to change people's minds, to give them a better view, to show them what life could be like if they would only open their eyes. So, Mr. and Ms. Fixer, she's doing just as good a job as you are, only she's not here suffering in order to do it. You don't have to suffer to fix something. And to the new citizen, she didn't do anything different than you did. Now, maybe the environment that she's fleeing is not toxic in the way that yours was, and I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you found peace and prosperity, if indeed you have. She found an environment that is better for her as well. There's nothing wrong with finding something better for yourself, for your family. And she didn't do anything different than you did. Does she love this country? Absolutely. But she had to find something better. She had to care for her own mental health. And you can't fault her for that. So what is my story, and what does any of this have to do with the channel? Well, in a word, labels. Now, you probably identify as an American. Most of us here do, and that's a big label. But if you go abroad, they don't. They don't say, I'm German. They say, I'm from Germany. Where are you from? It's so far less tribal. In Nathaniel Drew's video, Why Do Europeans Dislike Americans So Much? That was one of the big takeaways that I got from it, is that, well, we're arrogant. We are self-important. And and we like to capitalize ourselves. Our tribe is better than their tribe. And there's one message that's more important than any of this. One message that if you have nothing else comes across here that you believe me when I say that, is that life is not a Super Bowl. We Americans believe not only do we have to win, but somebody has to lose, and they have to lose hard. They have to be bloodied and beaten into the ground because there can only be number one. You know the mentality. You know how we are. So can America be fixed? Can we truly be a part of humanity, of a global culture? Can we understand what it is like to be from elsewhere, to learn from them, to teach? Well, we have to get rid of that we are number one mentality, that there has to be a big game winner. That's just part of our culture, but it's the part that's wrong. The rest of our culture will never grow, can never thrive until we learn to get rid of that. And so to my friend who is in a sailboat floating somewhere in the Caribbean, I'm glad you found peace. I'm glad you found what you were looking for. Everybody else, thanks for watching.